Okay, good afternoon, everyone. It is 1:08 p.m. on Tuesday, December the 9th, 2025. Welcome to the regular meeting of the North Kawartha Short-Term Rental Advisory Committee. This meeting will be recorded and be available for public viewing, so please be aware that comments made will end up part of our final upload to YouTube. I have not received any disclosures of pecuniary interest, but will remind everyone to declare if one does arise through the meeting. I'd also like to acknowledge that we are meeting on the traditional lands of the Anishinaabe. Colonial culture and relationship with our lands and waters are simply not the same as that of our First Peoples. I remain committed to a life of learning in order to better understand that which may not come naturally to me. We all share a responsibility to be stewards of not just our own land, but of our communities at large. And moving into the meeting, I'm looking for a mover to adopt the agenda with a potential addition, which is the document that was distributed by Janet.
Sorry, I didn't get that.
Oh, sorry, I thought that was copied to everyone. I'll distribute that now and then we'll add it in towards the end.
And we'll add that under correspondence.
Sure. Forward that to the committee now. My apologies. Don't need to copy Janet. Actually, I will just so you have it accessible. Okay, and I believe it's something that can mostly be addressed verbally with Janet giving a report to the committee, so this won't be overly stressful for members of the committee. I wouldn't be tossing on something overly complex and legalese.
No.
Okay, so a mover to adopt the amended agenda. Moved by Ruth Ann, seconded by Janet. All those in favor? That is carried. And then I'd be looking for a motion to approve the minutes of October 22nd's regular meeting. Moved by Janet, seconded by Ruth Ann. All those in favor? That is carried. So moving right into the draft recommendations, everything, again, fantastic work what's been put together. I've got one question, but I'd be looking for comments from the committee on the updates and sort of potential path forward here. Okay.
Just a couple of things. On the whole, I think this encompasses it. I can't see much else to be added unless there's something that I haven't heard yet. Under stage 6, this is just housekeeping for whoever the keeper of the document is. I think there's a typo in the first word. Could be this. And it's marked. Well,
Or it's these.
it's these. It's written in legal.
These are, I guess. This recommended, yeah.
And I think we were gonna include a definition. The definition that we talked about last meeting of, when was that, October? Did that, I didn't see it when I looked at it. Did I miss it, or do we?
If I may. Sure. So the document that should be attached to your agenda has 3 appendices, and the appendix 1 is the proposed definition.
Oh.
Are you seeing that?
I would say it's probably worth like putting that directly into the recommendations at this point, and then we have one fewer document to be adding to every agenda. Is that
It's all in one document.
okay?
Yeah. I'm okay with it there. It doesn't, as long as we include it somewhere.
Okay.
Sorry, I missed it. One thing, again, this is a little more housekeeping than anything as well. Under the findings section, as I read through this, there's a last paragraph there that's a little bit orphaned. Doesn't have a heading, but doesn't really apply to the section right above it.
What page?
3, bottom of page 3.
Going into page one.
Yeah, that paragraph. It doesn't really apply to the sort of registration licensing piece above. Kind of looks like it should be by itself. I don't know whether we call it regulatory considerations or regulatory impact or something. It just would seem made more sense to me if it had its own heading. Again, as long as it's there, I guess it doesn't really matter, but it's just a little bit of housekeeping. Other than that, for me, I'm good with the document as is, as long as it's formatted properly for presentation and to go forward.
So I'll jump in with the one concern I have, and actually, I'm not sure who the best person to comment on it would be. It may be Edward, actually. The one thing I think we need to be careful with is, like, I appreciate and agree with the principle that, like, the ghost hotels are considered the worst of the worst offenders in these situations. But we need to be very careful that we're not discriminating against individuals with our policies. So we need to find a mechanism if that, and it does seem to be the desire of the committee, is a focus that we want. We need to find, again, a legal mechanism to include them, because we can't just blanketly say that we want to eliminate this particular avenue more than others and focus our investigations on them, to the best of my knowledge. But Edward, are you able to comment on that?
I think Matt could probably speak to it more, but generally that procedurally, that by law, it has to be equitable in terms of the enforcement mechanism. So if, for example, the issue is related to the potential, if looking at this data and think that there's the potential for overcapacity of septic, that enforcement mechanism would have to be somewhat treated equal across the municipality and not targeting specific individuals that way. So yeah, there does have to be equitability in terms of the enforcement aspect across the township and generally.
Yeah, I don't get it. Why? They're not on an equal footing with anybody else in the township, any other property owner. They're completely different. So I don't understand why there's a problem with treating them differently or focusing on them for that matter.
Again, without Matt being here, but without licensing or register the municipality, if a municipality does have a licensing or a registration process, that is a way under the Municipal Act for compliance regarding septic in terms of that. But if it's just a general blank without that, and through this process, this is again just looking at septic, then more, if that's the issue, being saying that ghost hotels are possibly creating overcapacity septic, that just has to be looked at generally as an issue across municipality, not targeting just supposed ghost hotels. Basically the process in terms of that enforcement, but really be something that we can speak to specifically. But without licensing or those other, then it does have to be treated actively just like any other property throughout the township.
Well, I think Matt did address that during the last meeting. He basically said the same thing that you just said. And I don't get it. When you see a problem, then you address that problem. Whether it's fair or not doesn't enter into the equation. And I repeat myself because I said this 2 months ago. But it doesn't. You have to deal with the issue that you can see. And if that becomes a problem with sort of proactive enforcement rather than reactive, frankly, I don't understand how the township enforces any of its bylaws. If you apply that same standard across all the bylaws, how does the building department operate?
The one thing that I'll toss in, I don't think it eliminates proactive searching, but it eliminates proactive searching focused specifically on ghost hotels. Even though, again, in principle, I I agree. They're still individuals and we're discriminating that individual that owns their property and what they're doing with it. I wish it were easier, and I do believe there are some mechanisms that we can do to focus on it. We just need to make sure that it's legal, so then our best intentions don't turn into a liability for the town.
I think where we've tended to circle around and come back to is that if it's not possible to address some of the more egregious contraventions of bylaws, particularly as it relates to septic, but also fire code, that we go to licensing. It just seems to keep pointing to if there are barriers after barriers to bylaw enforcement, including treating all people equitably, even those who are in a different kind of violation, in that they're actually advertising the violations. We don't necessarily have to define that as ghost hotels. We can just say anyone who's egregiously violating. It's like, it's a difference in kind. It's not just we're putting a few more people in than the mom and pop down the street. It's a difference in kind. And if we don't want to define that difference in kind and call it ghost hotels because of that, then we can still go after the egregious violators that are so egregious that they're actually advertising the violations. Or we go to licensing.
And I think it may actually be an important consideration as to sort of skipping that first non-licensing step. I think overall, and we'll get back to the discussion about this document, but sort of for next meeting, this will be more formalized, sources added, and made it more of a formal presentation to council. But I do think we need some final input because one of the really key things here is enforcement, right? Everything that we do here is hinging on some sort of reasonable enforcement being able to be done. So that's what I'm thinking for our next meeting, and I think we're getting towards the end here, but we'll continue to flush out what's here, even though I think it's getting very close to finalized.
Yeah, well, it is and it isn't. I mean, not to belabor the point, but that whole piece around that proactive bylaw enforcement, which is what we're talking about, is key.
It's the crux.
It's the crux. And if we go, say for instance, the township seeks legal advice on it, I would guess that a lawyer is gonna say, no, you can't do that, or you shouldn't do that. That's what lawyers do. Then the rest of this document to me becomes somewhat meaningless, right down through including the licensing piece. Because if we can't get agreement on how to enforce or some sort of consensus or some way to enforce, I feel like we're wasting our time. And the other piece of this is, and I'll be quiet about it, is we're not suggesting the township go after these people. These people are out in the open and advertising. So it's not in that respect, it's not targeted. They're out in the open, they're advertising. We look at the ads, anybody could look at the ads and see what they say. They're advertising for overcapacity. That's the whole point of this. That's in the wide open. I no part of that is unfair, in my opinion.
But also, they're not the only ones advertising overcapacity, right? I think it's just specifying ghost hotels because they over advertise. Everybody pretty much over advertises what the capacity should be.
And I think the other important thing that we'll have to consider is just making sure that we have a broad sort of set of sources coming in, because if we simply just went on Airbnb.ca and started going through all those ones individually, I think there's a reasonable claim that somebody could say we're just sort of discriminating against people that are posting on Airbnb. But as long as we're making sure that we're including everybody within our investigation, I think we'd be a lot safer.
So that could happen through Granicus.
And Laura?
If I could just jump in, I think the flip side to that is, let's say I have a cottage on Big Cedar. And every week of the summer, I have at least 7 of my friends coming up. I would be in the same bracket as the people who are operating ghost hotels. I should be able to use the same steps. So education, oh, hey, you're over capacity. If that's not working, then we start looking into a little bit more enforcement, then AMP, that type of thing. So that's kind of how I'm seeing the equitable. So it's not specific to, and I think the Good Neighbors document kind of outlined that as well. It's not specific to renters. It's anybody on the lake. If I have 20 family members over for a weekend in a 2-bedroom cottage, my cottage, that would be just as terrible as someone renting out their cottage to 15 people for the weekend.
And the other thing that I'll add, and this is just something I'll ask Matt about, I think we're also a lot safer if the information comes in externally. If somebody says, oh, hi, there's an Airbnb beside me, here's the link. That also does help. So having a really flushed out complaint system would be an assistance there as well.
But it's been said before, and I believe it was Matt, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I believe that's where it came from. And there was legal advice that I saw before, that if a complaint is not included with contact information and all that sort of stuff, it doesn't get investigated. And you know that most of the complaints are going to come anonymously, because folks are really hesitant to provide their name, especially when you tell them you want their name and contact information in case it goes to court. They're not going to give you their name. So it's going to be a anonymous complaint. And you can't act on that anyway. That's what we've heard before. So I don't think we can depend on it coming from the outside as being a reliable way of doing this and catching a reasonable amount of these properties to be able to look at. You know what I mean? It's just, you might get 1, you might get 2, depending on how the complaints process goes. And then the rest, you know, talk about discriminating. You're only looking at 1 or 2 out of what, 10, 15.
All right, and I'm not suggesting it'd be the only avenue we take, but I think it is a safe avenue. But actually, we have a property owner here, so I don't mind asking for input for a moment here. Molly?
I am a property owner who is surrounded on a small lake, a very small lake, surrounded by Airbnbs. And I want to say it's not the same as a cottage owner having one weekend in the summer, the entire family of 20 people comes and stays. It's a constant, not just weekends, it's weekdays, it's every week of the summer, because the cottage is not inhabited by its owner. It was purchased for the purpose of being an Airbnb. There are many like that, and I totally agree that if there is no licensing, there can be no enforcement, and if there is no enforcement, what is the point of a complaint system, and what has this committee been doing for the past year? We have to arrive at some means of controlling the proliferation of Airbnbs. It's different from the cottage owner who rents their cottage out for a month or 2 weeks at a time to the same people year after year. This is a very different scenario. I pay over $8,000 a year in property taxes, and I get nothing for it now other than garbage pickup. Because I certainly don't get a tranquil environment, and I don't get peaceful enjoyment of my premises. I'm happy when winter comes Because although the Airbnbs are still rented out, I can't hear them now because my windows are closed. So I wanna know, really, why at this stage we're even debating the merits of licensing. And I want to know why we don't yet have a firm idea of how to license and enforce.
So, yeah, this is gonna be the final thing that we're nailing down in our report.
Well, I was disturbed because you said we're very close to finalizing the report.
But
And it seems to me that we're nowhere near finalizing the report.
and I was asking for input, but actually involving yourself with questions and discussions is not the most appropriate path forward. So it's just if I'm gonna try to be flexible here, let's try to make sure that we're just actually providing input rather than directing the discussion.
Okay, I have been providing the same input for the past year. And I don't want to be obstructionist. I'm just, I've missed the past couple of meetings and I just found myself surprised at what I'm seeing now.
Okay. So I think there's big questions that remain with the licensing enforcement, and that is the final part of this report that needs to be nailed down. But what else in the report, or if there's more in that discussion to be had now, do people want to potentially see tweaked?
Nothing for me. I don't see that licensing is still up in the air. That's dealt with in the report.
Okay. I guess it would be motion to receive the updates and direct or request that the bylaw official provides some final commentary on licensing, how that relates to enforcement, and what enforcement mechanisms are clearly available without licensing. And
We know that, we've heard that,
yeah, I think
no new information there.
so. I've heard it, but it also helps just to have this all sort of given to us like it's very simple. Like I know it sounds having it broken down into the basic building blocks, make sure that we're not accidentally wandering into a bad area. But if people don't want Matt to come back because they don't think it's necessary, then I'm open to that as well.
I don't, sorry, if you agree one more time. I don't think we're wandering into a bad area. The job of this committee, if I go back to the terms of reference, is to make recommendations. If we make those recommendations and they are considered unreasonable by staff or council, or completely unworkable by staff or council, then okay. But it's not, I don't see that as the role of this committee is to, you know, deal with the minutia of enforcement and fairness and all of the rest of it. I don't see that should be our primary focus. We need to consider that, of course, but that's not our primary focus. So if this went to council as it is now, and pieces of it council thought were unworkable or were not in the best interests of the township to pursue, then they won't pursue. That'll be the case no matter what's in this report. So that decision doesn't lie with this committee. I don't think it does. I don't think it lies with me, that's for sure. Then,
Yeah,
You
I think the bylaw component, I think it's up to bylaw to react or respond to the how. Could this be done rather than be part of the report? I think what we've done is after hearing deputations, including from the bylaw officer, this is what's been kind of put together.
Yeah, no, and it's a decision of the committee, and it's just if the enforcement is the one piece that the entire thing hinges on, I think it's actually our obligation to make sure that the enforcement mechanism is possible. I think that's the one area that really diving down into the minutia would be appropriate, because it's the one area that everything else in the document hinges on. But if people are okay leaving it as an investigation for council, I'm fine with that.
It's possible. Nothing in here is impossible. It's possible. It'll be up to, I mean, there are risks associated with any course of action. In anything that's in these recommendations. So it's possible to do any of this, but you have to assume a certain amount of risk in any decision. That's not for us to decide. We have to decide what we think is reasonable, and I think this is where we're sort of tripping over this. But as long as it is a reasonable course of action and is not unduly punitive, then the risks get assessed and it either gets acted on or it doesn't. Is that, am I oversimplifying it?
No, and what may be a halfway step, is just actually giving a formal final opportunity for staff to comment our report before we send it off. So we have an idea of what's actually going to be commented on, rather than sending off the document and then not knowing what staff's reaction to our document is gonna be towards council. Then we're not on the hook for doing all the bylaw stuff immediately. But if they come back and say we can't do this, then we have an opportunity to make sure that we find a path where they can.
Are we looking for approval on this advisory council's recommendation and staff? Are we looking for staff approval of this report or recommendations for changes? For example,
We recommend changes.
If a staff member reacted and said, you can't do this, do we still have the option to go ahead and recommend it? Or do we?
We would.
Okay.
But at that point, I think we'd need to have a good reason to be overriding it. And if that reason exists, that reason exists. But I think it's a big opportunity to be missed out on, to not have the individuals that are going to be providing final comment to council to provide final comment to us before we send it to council.
I think that's a reasonable way to do it, to get their recommendations on what they think. Yeah, and then it's our choice, right, to move forward, but I don't think that's unreasonable at all. I think it is enforceable with anonymous complaints. We just need to do it the right way, right?
You need to assess the risk.
Mhm.
What's the legal risk?
Mhm.
And then you move ahead or you don't.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So what's wrong with this is what I come back to, is what's wrong with suggesting it be done that way?
Mhm.
I'm not seeing it. Your comments about staff comments, that's fine. My only question here would be, we've heard from staff. The staff have been really good about coming and explaining things and answering questions and trying to help us understand what some of these things mean and what they don't mean. But with staff comments, are we gonna go through another round? And I think this is what you're getting at.
Yeah.
Are we gonna go through another round of changes to this document? Is that what's suggested?
Not in my world.
Well,
Yeah,
Is it?
it's fair, but no, I would say no, right?
Or it would potentially be expected by staff.
Yeah, it's not a changes. I don't think it'll be a complete overhaul, but there may be some final tweaks that we make based on final comments. But Connie?
So I'm just, I'm listening to some of Shane's earlier comments there, and just going back to in terms of reference document, which is what council laid out to the committee. And I think the committee has done quite a good job actually at meeting most of these things. There is a section there for the final report, and it lays out what the expectations are for the final report. There's also a section here that indicates under public open houses that council will hold a public open house once final recommendations have been received from the committee. So there's still more steps in the process that, you know, once the committee is satisfied with their final recommendations and it goes to council, council would have, and perhaps Alana can comment on this, but council would have some options there. I think when they go forward, I would put a brief report as secretary of the committee with it. And perhaps there would be a recommendation, something to the effect that council receive and consider the final recommendations from committee and provide direction, which could be whatever direction they deem appropriate. They may be very satisfied and say, let's go to a public open house with this and now hold a large open house, see what the public's saying, and then go back to the table. Or they might look at it and say, just like committee has, we need some further input from staff. So we're going to direct whatever the particular staff are to go back and provide a report on the recommendations. So it's not like, although it's the final report to council, there could be quite a few steps after that. And I think that's where you were coming from in your first comments, that committee can put forward any recommendation and then it's up to council to decide, are they going to take it or not, or change it a little bit? And I don't know if perhaps Alana can add something to that, but to me, the role is of committee is to follow what's in the terms of reference. And I think committee's done a really good job of all the research, all the work that's gone into it, and providing basically a phased in approach that I think looks pretty good.
So. And that's where I am. Almost right there. Advisory, in an advisory capacity, advisory is right in the name of this committee. We're providing the advice. You and I get provided advice every day we choose to take or not to take as we see fit. What I'm a little worried about is that we may agonize over some of the process in here and some of the other items that are in here and continue to try and tweak and back and forth when we've spent 24 months doing that, going through that exercise. And I'm not seeing, I guess I don't see the benefit of doing that further at this point by this group. Let's get where we think we need to be and then get it in front of staff, get it in front of council, get it in front of the public if that's what council decides they want to do, and see where it goes from there. We seem to be stalled here, and the last meeting, we kind of hung up on this enforcement piece, and here we are again 2 months later. So I don't see why we would hold up for that. It's that enforcement piece may be contentious, it may be controversial. Maybe staff will say, okay, sure, we can do that. How do we know?
Well, I think we know by asking them. Like we get a sneak preview at what's going to be coming towards council.
Mhm.
Like why would we sacrifice the opportunity to know what's going to be told to council on something we worked for 24 months on? If it comes forward and there's lots of sections that they have very serious concerns with as council, I'd be wondering why that wasn't addressed at the committee stage. But it's a
It
decision
goes
of everyone.
on the assumption that it hasn't been addressed at the committee stage. We've had a lot of good conversations with staff. And I don't think in this draft, there would be any surprises on how staff would react to some parts of it. I would be very surprised if something came out of left field.
That's fine.
So. Can we circulate it to staff for comment? As one of the next steps. And also then finalize it, unless we have any other issues with it today. I mean, we haven't heard from everyone, but unless we have any other pieces that need to be changed here. Get the staff comment on it. And submit it
I'm fine with
with the
that.
staff comments as another appendix, if that's what has to happen.
And I'm fine with that. I just think we'd be missing a massive opportunity by not getting staff comment beforehand.
No, I'm fine with that, yeah.
And you may just
Yeah.
get verbiage back that staff doesn't like. It might not be anything.
Mhm.
I mean, I don't think we should get any surprises from staff.
No.
I think we've been pretty thorough.
And then move it forward.
I know,
Does that?
Yeah.
Does that sound reasonable?
that would feel very good to me, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. And again, it's not that I'm trying to be a stick in the mud. I just think it's a huge missed opportunity to not have that final comment.
I'm not saying that at all.
Yeah.
I think the comments from staff are, that is a necessary piece of this.
Right.
What I'm afraid, what I don't want to see, and I don't have a problem submitting it even to council with those comments from staff. I don't have an issue with that. But I don't want to go back to the document and rework this thing for another 6 months.
Okay, well, and that's not what I have in mind at all. It would again just be, there might be one thing that we do need to tweak based on staff comments. It's not out of the question that we've missed one thing here. And if we can tweak that one thing and make it a much better document and much more credible across the board, that one extra meeting, I don't think is gonna be the one that breaks the camel's back given the extended process.
I'll reserve judgment on that until I see what the one thing is.
Yeah, yeah.
Let me clarify a couple of things before you get to the motion. If I may, through the chair, there was just a couple of comments made. I just have the document in front of me. One was that Shane mentioned on page 3-4. There is a section at the bottom that under findings, so if you go near the bottom. So there's the title, registration and licensing. And there was a section there that you thought didn't really tie in with that. And we should perhaps put a title on it, such as regulatory considerations. Was that just the last paragraph that started the committee heard numerous deputations?
Yes, yes.
Just right in that spot, regulatory considerations. That was a comment made for a change to the document if members were okay with that. And then there was the clerical correction, so I put that in. If you go to page 3, this was my question, under registration and licensing, it says many municipalities and regions have implemented registration and licensing systems to manage the proliferation of short-term rentals in their areas. See example list attached in the exhibits. And down under appendix 3 in the exhibits, which I think initially, Janet, you provided those items. So I'm just a bit concerned what exhibit ties into that. Is that the links to the Airbnb and Vrbo? Is that the intent with that?
Yeah.
And if it's okay, because I may just put in there appendix 3 exhibits just to kind of tie it in.
Yeah.
And I think that was the only comments I had, other than we did incorporate Ian's items. And one of the exhibits is also the survey that went out, and Kelly was able to, we didn't have it attached, but she was able to pull that back from the ArcGIS, so we can add the survey too, so council would receive all of that when it goes forward. Thank you. That's all I wanted to clarify. If you said with that.
So then I guess it's a motion to instruct that those final tweaks be added to the document.
So moved.
Janet. All those in favor?
No. we can't.
Do we need to, is there a motion necessary to forward, to say we're gonna forward this document to staff for comment?
Would that be worth including in the motion?
Same motion.
Yeah, we could, I think you voted on that already, didn't you? Or no? Yeah, so it could be a second motion that, so we've amended the document to ask for reports, and I'm just wondering if committee wants verbal reports for members to attend or for staff to review the document and submit their written, response to the document or written report in a letter.
And I'm just wondering if I can clarify the type of comment that the committee's looking for. So going back to the earlier comment, it's not really up to staff to approve or disapprove of any of the committee's recommendations. I think you've had really good participation in this committee, more than most from staff, so you've already got quite a bit of that information. So as was stated, once the recommendations are made, it would go to council. Council may decide to have a public open house. And then council will direct staff, which recommendations they agree with, all of them, they agree with, A, B, and C. And direct how they want staff resources to be spent on coming back with, we want to do this. What can staff do? How can we do this? So then it would be up to us to say like how or why, or get the legals or whatever's required. So we certainly can comment on the document, but we can't really, we're not approving or disapproving. If there's going to be difficulties in implementing something, that would be, once we knew council wanted to do that, we would come back with our best attempt of how we can accomplish your recommendation that was approved by council.
And then I'm wondering if it's replicative or duplicative, if staff needs to report back on this report, and then it goes to council, and then council asks staff again to. So
Yeah, I agree.
it's just adding time without value.
It's again a decision of the committee, but I think there's actually a realistic chance that if we send this off as is, it's gonna come back and staff's just gonna say, we can't do this. It's unenforceable, so good luck. That's the one concern that we're able to completely put out of our mind by having a final comment on our final draft. And then that doesn't come out of left field. And I given other municipalities that have had lawsuits with these bylaws, I think it's worth that one extra meeting just to give
So
us some safety.
in that situation, staff comments back at this stage and says, it's unenforceable, good luck. What do we do after that? What's our next step?
We have to tell council why we think it's enforceable. And then that is the addition in our recommendation, is saying, even though there's concerns about X, Y, and Z, the council believes that it's the township's responsibility to ensure that enforcement can happen and make a recommendation.
Is that not already in this document, in that we talk about how the current enforcement mechanism is driven in a legal lane, and we're looking at recommendations that enforcement is there's a likelihood or a probability, and we're not going to the level of enforceability from a legal standpoint. Is that not all kind of part of what we've recommended as a way to react to what staff has given to us in deputations?
And if that gives members the comfortability to move it forward, there's a reason there's more than one of us.
There's a section in there under section 2, I think it's page 5. It's, if I'm looking at the right document, it's the one marked in yellow, Connie, am I looking at the right one? Those changes were added and cover some of the discussion we've had today. basically to show anyone reading the report that we've considered this. We've considered the issues that are around this. We've considered the staff input that we got. And we feel that this is worth pursuing. This is worth more pursuing. So I sort of asked and answered if I can put it that way, where we've considered this. It's in the report. That consideration is there. If we, and I really don't want to come to the point where we're tailoring recommendations that fit the status quo in every case. It's not our job. We were given the task to review short-term rentals and the issues that supposedly surround them. And we've done that. I'm speaking for myself. We've done that. And I don't want to get put in the position, I don't feel that the committee should be getting put in the position where we have to keep paring this back and paring this back and paring this back until we match what, you know, what the township might consider status quo.
But I'd just be waiting for somebody to make a motion, and then are we able to do recorded votes on committee?
You could, I think, but
Could we just do a motion, though, that we were gonna answer stuff?
no, the motion was just that committee instructs staff to add the final tweaks to the final recommendations
Yeah.
to council document. That was the motion I heard that
Yeah.
was
Then
passed.
it would be a motion to bring it forward as the final document then is.
Yeah, and if I may. This could go to council and council could decide to, we want the committee to go back and do this or do that. If they feel something's not complete or that's my view anyway. And once a public open house is held, that could change things as well. I mean, we've seen that happen in the past. If, you know, you have a turnout to the public open house, this is presented, staff are there to answer questions, however council decides to do that process. And it could end up coming back again if there's additional work. Yeah, I'm just looking toward the CAO there to see if she would support that view or sees it a little differently. I think council's going to appreciate the amount of work that has gone into the document. And the document overall, if you look at it broadly, it's a phased-in approach and a process to see how that works. And maybe if some of the earlier stages serve to really address some of these issues, it doesn't end up going to the final stages.
Right.
I've wrapped up a few big projects recently, so I can actually formalize this and add in links within a week here. So then I'd be looking for a motion to instruct the chair to formalize, and I'll keep all the same language, but formalize the report and have it brought back. And it wouldn't include staff comment, it would just be have it returned to next meeting. That's what it seems like the desire is.
Staff comments are fine. If we have them by the next meeting and we want to attach them, that's fine. I was a little concerned when you read the motion back that it said staff to tweak the report.
I
think
took
just
that
those-
to mean just those changes
Yeah,
we talked
that
about.
motion.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right, yeah.
Ease with an eye and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I got it.
Okay.
All right, that's fine.
Yeah, not tweak the contents of it, do the grammatical and spelling typo type fixes that we mentioned.
Yeah, sorry,
Those were the ones.
that wasn't it.
No, but it's good to be careful. I appreciate that, Shane.
So 2 tweaks come back to this committee and potential staff reaction. And then at the next meeting, we're ready to send it to council.
But do we want, I wouldn't leave it at potential. Do we want staff to take a look at it or no?
Sure, I don't have an issue with that.
I don't have an issue with
And
that.
offer comment on it? Sure, by all means.
And that's covered in that motion, isn't it? Or, no, that was,
Yeah.
never mind, yeah.
So then it would be, sorry?
No, that's fine. I'm hearing that there might be another motion here to have staff comment. And I was just going to make you aware, we do have 4 members here on committee. I think under procedure, we could do a recorded vote if that's the desire. And just keeping in mind with 4 members, if you have a tie vote, it's basically,
A lot.
yeah.
Okay, good. And now that there's an inclusion of staff comments in the motion, I don't feel the need to call for a recorded vote.
Okay.
But honestly, if we weren't gonna do a CYA, I was gonna do a CMA. Like, I think it's just too big to not have done in that last meeting, so. I'm comfortable just having a regular old hand raised vote on this now. Do you have that motion, Connie?
Actually, I don't because my, this was not. Yeah.
Oh, no.
I have to bring the dog.
One more comment.
Um,
No, you already, yeah.
It's probably gonna be. The system sometimes does these random updates. Just give me 1 second. It's not gonna open Word, but if you'd like to give me that paper and I think your motion was just related to asking staff to provide comments on the document.
Yes.
Applicable staff, meaning by law enforcement and economic development officer. The committee requests that applicable staff provide comment on the final document.
Yes.
And are you basically hoping for a verbal or more of a written?
I would prefer written.
I think it's better.
Absolutely.
So the committee requests that applicable staff provide written comment on the final document at the next regular meeting of committee.
Yep.
Or maybe it's just the next meeting of committee because I'm not sure coming into the new year when you're
How we're
thinking
gonna-
of setting the next meeting, so at the next meeting of committee, and they'll figure that one out later. Oh, man, that motion.
Ned's making the motion. Do we have a second? Seconded by Janet. All those in favor? That is carried. Okay. That is the large one. Now moving into correspondence. We'll begin with the items of public submission here. We have discussed lots of the content of the emails, but it's also nice to see that members of the public are sharing the same concerns that we have. And gives us some validation that our work is in fact important and accurate. We can probably do them all 3 at once, but anything that any member wanted to pull out of our 3 communications. Not seeing anything, and again, I'm super appreciative that they wrote in,
Yeah.
but it's stuff that we're thinking about and considering. So are we able to receive those 3 submissions at once?
Yes, you can.
Okay, a motion to receive the 3 public submissions moved by Shane, seconded by Ruth Ann. All those in favor, that is carried. And we can start with Janet. Do you want to just give a verbal or actually, sorry, I'll call a recess for 5 minutes so we can read it. People can take a look at the document.
Okay.
We can stretch our legs. And then I think we're pretty well done, but at least it gives everybody an opportunity.